Good morning. I'm Eric Blank, and this is the Commissioners' Weekly Meeting for January 7th, 2026. Welcome to 2026, and hope everybody had a happy and healthy new year. With that, I'd like to modify the consent agenda by taking 25AL-0538G off it. With that one change, Commissioner Gilman, are you ready to vote to approve the consent agenda?
Good morning. Happy 2026 to you as well. And I would vote to approve the consent agenda with that change.
Commissioner Plant.
Good morning. You guys are looking good this year. I would
Not
vote
sounded great.
I vote to approve the consent agenda as well.
Thank you, as do I. I guess, Ms. Dundas, if you're out there, you want to take 25AL-0538G to start with?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good morning. I'm Lindsay Dundas of your Commission Council. And 25AL-0538G, which is Public Services, recently filed Phase 1 and Phase 2 gas rate case. In conjunction with their filing on December 29th, they filed a motion for approval of alternative form of notice to apply to this proceeding pursuant to 43104(1)C IE and Rule 1207B of the Commission's Rules of Practice and Procedure. Public Service requests various modifications to the notice requirements required by statute. Public Service requests the Commission approve putting a legal notice as a digital ad on the Denver Post website, posting the entire rate case to its public website, providing notice of this proceeding to parties to the prior gas rate case, providing an email to customers and a bill on cert for all retail natural gas customers. So for decision today is whether to approve those alternative forms of notice pursuant to Rule 1207B.
Commissioner Gilman.
Thanks, Ms. Dundas. Yeah, I agree with approving the alternative forms of notice. But I have no issue with the alternative forms, but maybe just a brief comment on the content that I saw in the filing. And just to mention, the notice requirement here is not designed to provide the company an opportunity to advertise their fuel preferences, express policy preferences, or editorialize on their desire and reasoning for revenue increases, especially on the customer dime parading around as official notice. So instead, I just wanted to bring up, and ideally we could recognize this distinction in the order coming out of this, that this notice should plainly inform customers of the company's request such that the customers are aware the utility has proposed for their bills to increase and provide the requisite details about how the customers can find more information. So I think it might be helpful to recognize that distinction given some of the content we saw in these notices.
I support that. And I guess this will be a written ABC order approving the alternative form of notice. I think you're suggesting we include language consistent with your comments in that order. Did I understand that correctly, Commissioner Gilman?
Yeah, if you agree, that's what I would suggest.
I agree, Commissioner Plant.
Yep, I agree as well.
And Ms. Dundas, that can be ABC.
Just quickly, Chair, is that a request to the company or an order to the company to modify the attachments as filed, or is this guidance to keep it plainer next time, or is this just a statement from the Commission that you're approving the forms of notice to be received, but not necessarily endorsing their?
I think it was a request to modify what they're proposing to do, but I defer to Commissioner Gilman.
Ms. Dundas, what do you think is feasible in this circumstance? I mean, I think it's important to certainly recognize this circumstance, but I'm interested in your opinion on how to best handle it moving forward.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner Gilman. I think at minimum, this discussion leans itself towards indicating in the order that you are just approving the form and not the contents, and that the contents aren't, the Commission's words. My only concern with modifying the actual language of the attachments is just the time that might take. I know that they're planning on getting these notices out ASAP. So I think it could be that the forms that were submitted as attachments here are fine if they're already in the process of going out, but for future use, those statements should be removed. Would be
I defer to you, Commissioner Gilman. What would you like to do?
I would say not ideal, but acceptable.
All right,
In this
there you have it, Ms. Dundas.
Okay,
Off to
I
a
think I
bad
can live with
start.
that in an ABC decision. Thanks
Yeah.
all.
Thanks, Ms. Dundas. 23M dash 0217, Ms. Sava, RTD, 3-year safety oversight audit and investigation.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jessica Sava with the Rail Transit Safety Section. Staff completed the semi-annual virtual and on-site safety audit 6 of RTD and submitted a report of those findings to the Commission for review on December 29th, 2025. In this audit, there were no findings of noncompliance made. One checklist was reviewed during the fall 2025 audit 6. PUC staff developed 36 new checklists during the audit 6 cycle. If there's any questions, I'll pause. Otherwise, I can move to the recommendation.
Yeah, if you can go to your recommendation, that'd be great.
Staff recommends that the Commission approve the semi-annual virtual and on-site audit report dated December 29th, 2025.
Commissioner Gilman,
thank you, I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
as do I, and that can be an ABC decision adopting the staff report. Thank you, Ms. Sava.
Thank you.
Let's do the 24 JTS discussion last. And let's move to 25A-0036E. Mr. Davis, Mr. Foreman, Public Service Company on Bill Finance Program. Mr. Foreman.
Good morning, Commissioners. Wyatt Foreman of your Commission Council. This proceeding is Public Services Tariff On-Bill Financing, or OBF, application. Before you today are the rehearing, re-argument, or reconsideration, or RRR applications to the Commission's decision on exceptions, decision number C25-0850, which were filed on December 16th, 2025 by Commission trial staff and the Office of the Utility Consumer Advocate, or UCA, as well as the motion for leave to respond and response to UCA's RRR filed by the Southwest Energy Efficiency Project, or SWEEP, on December 22nd, 2025. My plan is to set up each decision point for your discussion and votes, and I'll note that Commissioner Plant served as hearing commissioner in this proceeding and therefore may wish to speak first with an initial proposal after I present certain decision points. I can start with staff's RRR. Staff asked the Commission to clarify the specific cost-benefit analysis, or CBA, the Commission directed Public Service to file with the company's upcoming 2026 DSMBE application. For context, in its decision on exceptions, the Commission directed the company to file a CBA with its upcoming DSMBE filing using a modified utility cost test, or UCT, to capture costs to the rate base against societal and system benefits. In its RRR, staff requests the Commission clarify that the CBA Public Service must file should be more comprehensive and include both the modified total resource cost test, or MTRC, and the participant cost test, or PCT, as well as the UCT. Staff maintains this is consistent with analyses used for other demand-side management measures and is helpful to evaluate participant impacts, particularly where income qualified or IQ participation is conditioned on bill savings that offset loan obligations, as is the case here. Staff asserts a more comprehensive CBA provides a stronger evaluation of the OBF program and mitigates the risks of establishing a program that may appear cost-effective under one test, but fails to demonstrate cost-effectiveness under others. Staff highlights PCT as particularly relevant to implementing the Commission's requirement that OBF be made available to income-qualified customers only when finance measures result in utility bill savings sufficient to offset loan obligations. Staff therefore asks the Commission to clarify that the company's CBA should include the MTRC, the UCT, and the PCT, and it asserts this will be helpful in evaluating the OBF program in the future and better align the program with other programs offered as part of the company's DSM portfolio. So the first decision point for you here is should the commission clarify that public service must include the MTRC, the UCT, and the PCT in the on-bill financing cost-benefit analysis that it files with its upcoming DSMBE application as requested by staff.
Makes sense to me. I'll turn it over to you in a second, Commissioner Plant, but I probably also had the rim test so we can say the full range of results, but anywhere you'd like to go.
Sure. I partially agree with staff. I think that we changed the low income program to require that there's individual savings in the projected changes. So I think that the PCT is appropriate in that case because we are making that specific individual determination. I disagree with staff that the MTRC actually gives us a more comprehensive view of cost effectiveness. I just don't think it measures cost effectiveness. To me, it attempts to sort of replace a person's individual financial decisions with our evaluation of whether or not it's personally beneficial to them to get financing. And I just don't think that's an appropriate role for us to play. And that's why I suggested that we use the modified utility cost test because that will take what the rate base is putting in as an incentive or a cost and measure it against the benefits that the entire rate base is getting out of the investment. And that to me is what measures cost effectiveness is if what you put in is getting a return. I would also add that one of the things that staff raises a concern about, I think, is actually addressed by using the modified utility cost tests, and that is that they express a concern that low-income customers would potentially end up subsidizing higher income customers. And I think that the modified utility cost test actually eliminates that issue because it's evaluating what the entire rate base is putting in and saying the entire rate base is going to benefit more from that investment, and therefore it takes out that individual component. It's really just saying it doesn't matter who implements a program, the program is going to be beneficial to the rate base. And so that's why I think that the MUCT is a much better evaluator. If we wanted to have more just to give us more information, I'm certainly fine with that. I just don't think it should be seen as determinative. And I think that the more appropriate way of determining whether something is cost effective is to look again at what the rate base is putting in and what the rate base is getting out, and determining what's cost effective based on that rather than individual financial decisions.
Your last comment was the one I was going to poke at, which is I'm fine with how you want to determine cost effectiveness, but I'm hoping we can ask for seeing all the tests because I think each of them contains some useful information. So are you okay? It sounds like you are, but if we ask for all the tests that staff wants, maybe plus the REM, as long as we define cost effectiveness consistent with your discussion, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I would. The only clarification, I think that the staff had indicated just using UCT, and I had indicated a modified UCT so that we make sure that we measure the benefits the same as well.
Commissioner Gilman?
Yeah, I'm good with those comments, and especially would like to reflect kind of Commissioner Plant's comments that none of these in and of itself is determinative, but help kind of to inform the broader vision and generally agree with Commissioner Plan on like looking at this from a utility perspective helps to understand if the rate base as a whole is disadvantaged or advantaged through a certain program. It's very hard to kind of supplant our determination for what choices an individual consumer is making. There are tons of reasons consumers make choices, not to mention some of which their mechanical system may have simply died and they have to buy something. That blows up all of the assumptions, right? The only other thing I want to add in this discussion is I don't know, Commissioner, Flynn, the extent to which this was discussed, but I certainly found very valuable in other proceedings to have the CBA be CBAs in this circumstance, plural, be submitted as executable documents. Often in the past, we've had disagreements over different inputs that were used, the values, and to a large extent, the difference between these cost tests is just choosing different inputs to include in different versions. An executable can do all of that. You can simply not include things, and also test different assumptions about appropriate input values to the extent those are questioned by parties or whatever. So I don't mean to overly complicate this here at the end, but maybe would just add the concept that an executable can really help. And I think that's the expectation as far as what is submitted here, including viewing all of these different things and viewing differences in inputs that may be necessary to be evaluated.
I don't think that complicates anything, and I I support that.
Spreadsheets never complicated.
I don't know about never, but Mr. Foreman, you want to keep going?
Yeah, I'll just note that I believe the commission's decision on exceptions does require that the CBA be filed as in an executable format, so we can reiterate that here. And it sounds like this is a decision to grant the staff's triple R and possibly also require the additional REM test as part of this CBA.
I think it was the grant in part, deny in part.
Grant.
I think staff wanted to use it as part of the cost benefit determination, and Commissioner Pat, I think, clarified that we were going to be fairly specific about how we determine cost benefit. But Commissioner Plant.
No, I think that's accurate. It's for information purposes and not for determination of.
Yeah, so the
Okay.
grant in part, deny in part, with
Okay.
a discussion consistent with Commissioner Plant's comments.
Okay, that sounds good. I will next turn to UCA's triple R and Sweep's motion. UCA makes three arguments on triple R. It first argues that by permitting the company to establish a loan loss reserve, as the commission did in its exceptions decision, the commission deprived parties of due process. For context, in its exceptions, Public Service asked the Commission to further consider the establishment of a deferral mechanism now in this proceeding due to the new directives and guidance in the recommended decision. The principal change supporting this request was the potential initial capital amount reaching $100 million, but the company also pointed to the potential program eligibility of gas-only customers and to recent negative actions taken by the federal government related to clean energy projects. In its decision on exceptions, the Commission granted Public Services exceptions on this point and approved the establishment of a loan loss reserve. The Commission stated it was persuaded of the need for a regulatory asset, considering it preferred the establishment of a loan loss reserve over disconnections, as well as the expansions of the OBF program made in the recommended decision, and upheld the decision on exceptions. The Commission explained it was also persuaded that with the implementation of a loan loss reserve, and the flexibility afforded to Public Service and the Collective Clean Energy Fund, or CCEF, which is the third-party financing entity for the program, regarding the finalization of disconnection policies related to non-payment, the interest rates offered through the program should be reduced by 0.5%, as suggested by SWEEP in its exceptions. The Commission therefore directed the company to work with CCEF to reduce the initial interest rates by 0.5% and directed the company to file a report detailing the impact of the loan loss reserve with its 2026 DSMB filing. On Triple R, UCA asserts that in its application, Public Service did not propose or put forward any funding to support the creation of a loan loss reserve as a tool to enable lower OBF loan interest rates. UCA also maintains the testimony offered at hearing by company witness Murphy regarding the effect of a loan loss reserve on the interest rates offered by CCEF was, quote, hearsay, speculative, and unable to be tested through cross-examination. UCA also asserts CCEF's ability to increase program capital up to $100 million was not supported by substantial evidence. According to UCA, as the record stands, there is no reliable evidence in the record to demonstrate that CCEF intends or has the capacity to increase the capital available to fund the program to an amount 10 times higher than that initially available for the launch. UCA further states that because the recommended decision allowed for capital amounts that are what it calls, quote, far in excess of those proposed by Public Service claims CCEF will now require a loan loss reserve to go forward with the program, irrespective of whether the full $100 million of capital is achieved. UCA asserts that no party was able to vet through cross-examination or otherwise respond to this claim made by CCEF through Public Service. UCA argues because the information to support the Commission's decision to create a regulatory asset, which include the increased capital amount, riskier customers, and changing federal policies, was provided after the close of evidence in this case, and the Commission should reconsider its decision on the issue and reopen the evidence so that intervening parties have a meaningful opportunity to respond to these new claims. In the alternative, UCA argues the Commission should reconsider and leave open the consideration of a loan loss reserve to the forthcoming DSMBE application proceeding, as the recommended decision did. On December 22nd, 2025, SWEEP filed a motion for leave to respond in response to UCA's Triple R pursuant to Rule 1506B. SWEEP raises 4 arguments in support of its request that the Commission consider its response. SWEEP argues UCA incorrectly claims the Commission decision authorizing Public Service to expand the size of the financing program is not supported by substantial evidence and is inconsistent with the record. SWEEP asserts UCA's claims that the Commission's decision is not supported by substantial evidence and that the $10 million funding level is the only funding amount consistent with and supported by the evidence in this case, both materially misrepresent the facts in the record and include an incorrect statement of law. SWEEP also argues UCA overlooks the fact that SWEEP proposed a $100 million program as an alternative to the company's $25 million proposal, and that SWEEP presented evidence showing that Public Service's proposal would likely be too small to meet customer demand, and that successful financing programs in other states provide larger amounts of financing per capita. SWEEP recounts its testimony regarding how a greater funding amount could expand the reach of the program, and highlights that both the recommended decision and the Commission's decision on exceptions relied on the facts presented by SWEEP in support of this position. SWEEP therefore rebuts UCA's claim regarding insufficient evidence to support the increased funding level. SWEEP further rebuts UCA's claim that the record is devoid of any information regarding how CCEF intends to raise the additional capital funds. SWEEP argues these statements mischaracterize the record and the Commission's decision. It points out, pursuant to the Commission's decision, CCEF can only expand the program if funds become available and only after Public Service completes a 60-90-day notice process that would provide more information regarding the additional funding. SWEEP therefore argues UCA is incorrect in claiming the Commission's decision approved a $100 million financing program budget, quote, based on unsupported speculation regarding how CCEF would raise the additional funds. Finally, SWEEP argues UCA's Triple R includes an incorrect statement of law when it asserts that the Commission's decision is not supported by substantial evidence. SWEEP cites to the Commission's explanation of the phrase substantial evidence in decision number C-240601, in which the Commission explained that the phrase is a term of art, meaning only such relevant evidence as a reasonable person's mind might accept as adequate to support a conclusion. SWEEP also cites to Section 40-6-115, which directs the reviewing court to examine whether the Commission, quote, acted in accordance with the evidence. SWEEP therefore argues UCA is incorrect as a matter of fact and law when it claims the decision is not supported by substantial evidence because SWEEP presented and the Commission relied upon evidence showing why the Commission should authorize Public Service to implement a larger financing program and why doing so would improve the company's proposal. So there are 2 decision points for you here. The first is whether to grant SWEEP's motion for leave to respond and thereby consider SWEEP's response in deciding on UCA's Triple R. And I can pause here for a vote or continue to a recommendation.
Commissioner Plant, you want a recommendation?
Yeah, recommendation would be great.
Council recommends granting the motion. While responses to triple R are not common, Commission Rule 1506B permits a party to file a response to triple R upon motion, provided the motion demonstrates one of several enumerated rationales, including that the triple R includes a material misrepresentation of a fact in the record or an incorrect statement or error of law. Sweet maintains its motion satisfies this standard, and council is persuaded by the arguments presented concerning UCA's misrepresentation of the commission's findings regarding the program's authorized funding levels. And council also notes that a similar motion was granted in the company's clean heat plan proceeding.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
Commissioner Gilman,
I also agree.
as do I.
So then the next decision point for you is to then address UCA's first triple R argument, which is, should the commission reopen the evidence so parties can respond to the company's claim that CCEF requires the establishment of a loan loss reserve, or in the alternative, defer the decision to establish such a deferral mechanism to the company's DSMBE plan proceeding.
Commissioner Plant,
Yeah, I would reject both of those proposals. We actually had quite a bit of discussion around this both during the hearing, and then there was also discussion in the SOPs that were submitted. And there's one clarification that I would make, and this is just like a little technical thing. I think we may be somewhat incorrect in calling this a loan loss reserve, because that suggests a body of funds that are used as a reserve. And in this case, we're using a regulatory asset, which is more of a loan loss guarantee. Either way, it's a credit enhancement to try and reduce the risks. And I think that, additionally, to get to another point that UCA made, I think that the actions that the commission made in the modification of the decision, particularly around the low income customers, actually decreased the risk pretty substantially. And so I would reject the triple R.
Commissioner Gilman,
I agree.
as do I.
Okay. UCA next argues the commission must determine whether renters can be legally responsible for their landlord's OBF obligations before deciding that they can be included in the company's OBF program. In its decision on exceptions, the commission declined to exclude renters from the program and found that on-bill financing has the potential to provide significant benefits to renters. The commission acknowledged the concerns regarding renters raised by UCA and Energy Outreach Colorado, or EOC, and required the company and CCEF to take those concerns into account as they work towards incorporating renters and IQ customers into the program. The commission also required the company to use the 60-90-day notice process when renters are proposed to be eligible to participate in the program. On triple R, UCA argues the commission's use of the 60-90-day notice process is flawed because it, quote, allows the company and CCEF to commit time and resources toward inclusions of renters without first any legal determination of whether renters can be included and responsible for their landlord's OBF obligations. UCA contends that because the 60-90-day process does not outline an adjudicatory process by which any legal determination can be made, it maintains that before the commission approves the 60-90-day process, it must first reach what it calls the threshold issue of whether renters can ever be legally included in the manner in which they are responsible for the landlord's OBF obligations. UCA specifically cites to section 38-12-801 3A Roman numeral 6, which according to UCA prohibits a landlord from including in a rental agreement a provision that requires a tenant to, quote, pay a markup fee for a service for which the landlord is billed by a third party. And it also cites to section 6-1-737-4S, which UCA asserts relates specifically to customer utility bills and prohibits a landlord from requesting a tenant to pay, quote, a fee, charge, or amount for the provision of utility that is above the amount charged by the utility to provide service to the tenant's dwelling, except in accordance with 38-12-801. UCA therefore asks the commission to reconsider the decision to include renters, or at a minimum, reach the threshold issue. So the decision point for you here is, should the commission make a legal determination regarding whether renters can be legally responsible for their landlord's obligations? And if so, what is that determination? And I can pause here for a discussion or a vote or proceed to a recommendation.
Commissioner Plant?
Yeah, I think a recommendation would be great.
Council recommends making the determination that the statutes cited by UCA do not legally prohibit a landlord from passing the cost of an OBF upgrade onto a renter. UCA cites two statutory provisions in support of its proposition. However, Council disagrees with UCA that these provisions necessarily prohibit OBF costs from being passed from a landlord to a tenant. Having reviewed the statutory provisions and their relevant frameworks, Council instead interprets these provisions to protect tenants against landlords charging a tenant for more than the cost of service provided to the landlord, but do not support UCA's assertion that a landlord would be legally prohibited from passing the actual costs of an OBF upgrade onto a tenant. Council therefore recommends the Commission make this finding and thereby grant the RRR on this point, but only in part. And I'll turn it over to you.
Commissioner Plant?
I agree.
Commissioner Gilman?
I also agree.
As do I. Anything else on this?
There's one more argument from UCA to address here. That is, UCA continues to argue for a limited scale pilot on-bill financing program with funding authorized up to $10 million, a $25,000 per premises loan cap that excludes customer disconnections, excludes renters, and that will have a limited term of 18 months to 2 years. In its decision on exceptions, the Commission denied staff and EOC's exceptions, which both argued for a scaled-down OBF program, citing a lack of safeguards and uncertainties in the program's funding, contract structure, and consumer protection framework. In denying these exceptions, the Commission stated it views the implementation of a more expansive OBF program as a necessary step forward, and emphasized the program can be refined in the company's DSMB filing. On RRR, the UCA echoes the concerns raised by staff and EOC in their exceptions and asserts the Commission's approval of the company's program, despite the current lack of certainty, undermines the case litigation process because parties will only understand the contours of the program after the close of the proceeding. UCA asserts the Commission should reconsider its decision to authorize funding up to $100 million and instead authorize a funding of $10 million, which it maintains is the only funding amount consistent with and supported by the evidence in the case. UCA states the record is devoid of information regarding how CCF intends to raise the additional capital funds up to $100 million. UCA also argues the Commission should establish a $25,000 per premises loan cap to avoid customer overextension and reduce the risk of customer disconnections. UCA cites to the survey submitted by staff as Hearing Exhibit 700 Attachment NTG2 that demonstrates a $25,000 cap is consistent with the loan amount offered by other utilities for OBF programs, and asserts such a cap reasonably balances the purposes of the program against the potential risks of the $50,000 cap approved in the Commission's decision on exceptions. UCA next argues the program should exclude customer disconnections because the evidence in the record demonstrates disconnections do not improve loan performance, and certain aspects of the program's disconnection process remain undeveloped. UCA then argues the program should exclude renters. It cites to the legal uncertainty raised earlier in its RRR and also highlights that the inclusion of IQ customers, who UCA asserts are more likely to be renters, should be deferred until policies are established to screen for customer affordability and overlap with energy assistance programs, and assurance that such customers cannot take on additional payment obligations that cannot be covered by existing safety nets. Finally, UCA asserts the program, which was approved for a 3-year term, should run for a limited term of 18 months to 2 years. It argues this shorter time frame will allow parties to gain insight, and the company can then propose a more developed program with its DSMB filing. So the final decision point for you here is whether the Commission should modify its decision on exceptions and approve a scaled-down pilot OBF program as proposed by UCA.
Commissioner Plant?
Yeah, I think we kind of addressed all of these various issues in our last discussion, and I don't want to reiterate everything here, but this is again, on-bill finance programs are, exist all over the country, and one run with CCF, which is very similar, is actually already operating here in Colorado through the Tri-State program, and so I think that, this idea of we need to do this as a small scale pilot isn't really supported. I want to also reiterate that the program is starting with a $10 million fund because that's what's available. But we're authorizing, if the funds do become available, to be able to grow that program up to the size of $100 million to the extent that the money is available. And that would, as I think Sweep identified in their testimony, help us to meet the population of the utility more in line with other on-bill finance programs that have been successful around the country. So with that, I would recommend rejecting the triple R.
Commissioner Gilman,
I agree.
as do I. Anything else, Mr. Foreman?
I believe that's it. Would you like an ABC decision on this?
Commissioner Plant, you okay with an ABC decision?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Commissioner Gilman?
That's fine.
ABC works. Thank you for walking us through that, Mr. Foreman.
Thank you.
Mr. Davis, 25A-0548E, Black Hills Markets Plus.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Ron Davis of the Commission Advisory Staff. On December 30th, Black Hills Colorado Electric filed an application for Commission approval to recover, through its energy cost adjustment, the costs of its planned participation in Markets Plus, the day-ahead regional wholesale electricity market sponsored by the Southwest Power Pool, or SPP. Black Hills states that it filed the application because Public Service Company of Colorado is joining SPP Markets Plus, and since Black Hills is an embedded entity within the Public Service Balancing Authority, its customers will incur Markets Plus related costs, regardless of its own direct participation in Markets Plus. Black Hills admits it cannot state with certainty that its customers will realize net benefits from participation in SPP Markets Plus. However, as an embedded entity, Markets Plus costs will flow to the company's customers through the service charges from public service without corresponding benefits of market participation unless the company itself joins Markets Plus. Black Hills filed the application with supporting direct testimony of 2 witnesses. The Commission's rules governing applications related to day-ahead market participation, the issue raised here, require the Commission to open what is called an abbreviated adjudicatory proceeding and to notice the filing, establish an intervention period for the purpose of establishing parties, and to set a schedule for receiving written, initial, and responsive comments in a way that results in a written decision within 150 days of the application filing. Also, in terms of timing, the application states that SPP's Western Energy Imbalance Services market will sunset upon the go-live of the SPP Regional Transmission Organization expansion in April of 2026. The question before you this morning is whether to establish a shortened notice and intervention period for the application, given the timeline set out in Rule 3753B1. So I can answer questions, or I can make a procedural recommendation related to that decision point.
If you can make a recommendation, that'd be great, Mr. Davis.
Thank you. I recommend that the Commission set a shortened notice and intervention period with the interventions due January 23rd. This would be accomplished through an ABC decision, and other procedures would be established by separate decisions.
Commissioner Gilman?
I agree.
Commissioner Plant?
I agree.
As do I, and that can be an ABC decision consistent with your recommendation. So thank you, Mr. Davis.
Thank you.
Proceeding number 25D0328G, Rocky Mountain Natural Gas Compressor Declaratory Order. Ms. Dundas.
Good morning, Commissioners. Lindsay Dundas of your Commission Council. We discussed this proceeding last week, so I'll try to keep the intro short here. But in this proceeding on August 4th, Rocky Mountain Natural Gas, or RMNG, filed a petition for declaratory order requesting confirmation that a CPCN is not required to replace 2 aging compressors at its Crystal River compressor station with 1 single new compressor of equivalent function. In decision number R250813, the ALJ found that no CPCN was necessary because the replacement in this instance is characterized as ordinary course of business pursuant to 45-101-1A3 of the Colorado Revised Statutes. The recommended decision emphasizes that its determination is limited to the specific project described in the petition and does not determine how similar projects should be evaluated in other commission proceedings. Staff filed exceptions to the recommended decision in which it states that it does not oppose the legal conclusion that a CPCN is not required under the existing rules, but it believes it's appropriate for the commission to, expressly affirm whether equivalent compressor replacements of this type fall within the ordinary course of business as it raised in its notice of intervention. Staff agrees that the current version of the commission's rules does not require an alternatives analysis for such a project. However, staff believes that, quote, this issue is ripe for review by the commission as the ability of a transmission level utility such as RMNG to replace large gas-powered infrastructure, such as a compressor with new gas-powered devices without the requirement of a CPCN or presentation of alternatives, such as electrification, creates a situation in which utility could continue using gas-emitting devices in perpetuity without review by the commission.
It's easy for you to say.
Accordingly, staff notes that the issue could be the subject of a rulemaking proceeding to modify the commission's rules, but staff states as a policy issue, this question is well suited for review by the full commission. RMNG filed a response to staff's exceptions in which it argues the commission should deny staff's exceptions and affirm the ALJ decision, and that the ALJ correctly decided the petition based on the current gas rules and statutory framework, which does already address the state's climate and greenhouse gas reduction goals. RMNG highlights that the petition was initiated in compliance with the settlement agreement, and that imposing or implying new obligations in this docket without notice, roll text, or an evidentiary foundation would be arbitrary and prejudicial. Finally, RMNG argues that exceptions are not a vehicle for advisory policy rulings, and staff can initiate a rulemaking if it seeks to change the rules prospectively. So I'll pause here for your discussion, or I can provide a recommendation.
I just say I'm sympathetic to staff's concern that this compressor investment may not be the most appropriate economic or environmental choice. I also have general concerns that the incentives and current cost of service regulation may favor capital spending in ways that encourage utilities to replace this kind of equipment through more capital-intensive approaches. At the same time, however, as we discussed last week, perhaps this issue is at best explored in the context of a subsequent rulemaking rather than in this case. So I'm okay denying the staff exceptions here, but would put some language in our order outlining the concern and usefulness of the potential alternatives analysis and perhaps our desire to look at this in the future in the context of a rulemaking. So I don't know, Commissioner Gilman, thoughts?
Yeah, I generally agree. I agree with you that I'm also sympathetic to some of staff's concerns here, but think we can suitably address this in a rulemaking. And we'll point out there are many suggestions for a follow-on GIP rulemaking within testimony in that proceeding, especially to address the comprehensiveness of where alternatives analysis should apply for utility investments. And at the end of the day, whether this is about clean heat goals or anything, we should be ensuring that the utilities are acting in the customer's best interests and ensuring that that they're doing what is the lowest cost solution to serve the need. And so I think we can appropriately address this with rules and would roughly intend to do so later this year.
Commissioner Plant.
I agree.
Ms. Stendas, does that give you what you need for an ABC order?
Yes, that will be an ABC order denying staff's exceptions, upholding recommended decision, and adding comments or adding language in line with your comments today.
That'd be great. Thank you, Ms. Stendas. Mr. Eden, Mr. DeCenzo, back to 24A-0442E, Public Service Company, Just Transition. Take us home, Mr. Eden. Slowly.
It's a long journey, yeah. Good morning. I'm Michael Eden with your advisory team. Today, I, along with Dan Greenberg and Mike Mendelson, will present the applications for rehearing, re-argument, or reconsideration, or the triple Rs, that parties filed regarding the Commission's Phase 1 decision. At a high level, the Phase 1 decision establishes guardrails within which Public Service may initiate an all-source competitive bidding process to acquire additional generation and storage resources to meet the company's resource need in the coming years. As part of this resource acquisition process, the Commission ruled on several proposals from Public Service, state agencies, and local communities on how to help ensure a just transition for communities that will be impacted by the accelerated retirement of the company's coal-fired power plants. As you know, numerous issues were filed in RRR, which is consistent with the overall scope of the Just Transition Solicitation, or the JTS proceeding. Advisors don't think it's feasible to address all of the RRR issues this morning, so we plan to come back next week for an additional Step 2 deliberations. I'll pause for any opening comments or questions, or if you like, we can jump into the discrete RRR issues.
I don't have any opening questions, so I'm ready to jump into the individual questions, but do you guys have anything you want to say before we jump into it? Let's jump in there, Mr. Eaton.
All right. With that, I'll first turn it over to Mr. Mendelson to present several RRR issues related to large loads.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Mike Mendelson of your advisory team. As quick background, in paragraphs 68 to 70 of Decision C-25-0747, the Commission determined that to be included in the updated load forecast, large customers must execute both an interconnection agreement and an energy service agreement, which must contain the modified commercial principles as well as a fair notice provision that a new large load tariff, or LLT, may apply. This requirement was for all customers with projected loads 50 megawatts and higher, as measured across all meters billed to the same entity, and regardless of whether the customer connects at the transmission or distribution system voltages, or is identified as a strategic economic development customer or not. In paragraph 70, the Commission distinguished loads from 20 megawatts to 50 megawatts as not requiring the commercial principles, but still requiring the contract to include a fair notice provision. In paragraph 76 and 77, the Commission made slight adjustments to the modified commercial principles submitted in rebuttal testimony and noted they will be fully litigated in the LLT proceeding expected later this month. I'll note that Public Service and East Metro Area Business Council jointly filed a RRR that requests the Commission adopt an exemption for up to 500 megawatts of transmission general, or TG customer loads, referred to as the TG window. Several parties filed a joint motion to respond to the TG window concept and critiqued it on procedural and substantive grounds. Advisors will present arguments for and against the TG window concept next week. So the first issue, I'm going to take up the first two items on the decision matrix, includes the load threshold and the issue of new versus existing customers. CEO is concerned that the Commission's approach for large load customers is unclear, will be difficult to implement, and will likely stall the market for large load customers. CEO suggests the Commission's decision creates three categories of large customers: customers 50 megawatts and above, between 20 megawatts and 50 megawatts, and customers under 20 megawatts. CEO requests several clarifications, including whether customer classification is identified by a customer's total peak megawatt demand over the RAP or on the incremental new load being requested, and suggests the former could create a scenario where a single megawatt of a customer's load growth could place its total load at risk of the large load tariff. CEO also wonders whether these new classifications of customers apply to all customers or only new customers, or are already designated strategic economic development customers. CEO also notes that the Commission's decision requires the company to file a clean transition tariff, or CTT, at the same time as the large load tariff at the end of this month, for which they ask a series of questions, which I'll raise below. CEO suggests until the uncertainties caused by the Commission's decision are resolved, Colorado may miss out on the benefits of large load additions. WRA and SWEEP contend the Commission should ensure consistent use of the 50 megawatt demand threshold when defining a large load customer throughout its decision. including the applicability of the commercial principles, the inclusion in the company's load forecast, and the emissions reporting in the incremental need pool process. WRA and SWEEP suggest the Commission should clarify that the commercial principles in the Commission's decision reflected in paragraph 76 to 78 apply to all customers above the 50 megawatt demand thresholds. They also contend that without additional clarity, the decision could be read to approve the company's proposed 100 megawatt thresholds for commercial principles. I can pause here for your discussion, answer any questions, or provide a recommendation.
Yeah, if you can give us a recommendation, that'd be great.
All right. Advisors recommend the Commission clarify that CEO is correct and that the decision distinguished 3 different load sizes, less than 20 megawatts, from 20 to 50 megawatts, and over 50 megawatts. We also recommend the Commission clarify that such load designations are applicable to all customers, new and existing, but only for the incremental or expanded portions of their loads, and that the designation of this incremental load should be based on the maximum projected usage over the RAP period. That is, excluding existing loads prior to the RAP forecast. Therefore, new or incremental loads that exceed 50 megawatts over the RAP can only be included in the resource need forecast if they sign an ESA and an IA that includes the updated and modified commercial principles and the fair notice provision indicating they may be impacted by the upcoming large load clean transition tariff proceeding scheduled to be filed on January 31st. With respect to new or incremental loads with maximum requirements between 20 and 50 megawatts over the RAP, these are required to include the fair notice provision in whatever contracts are signed, but are not required to include the commercial principles. Newer incremental loads that don't exceed 20 megawatts over the RAP are not subject to further condition and can be included in the company's updated forecast as originally proposed. Advisors suggest the Commission remind the audience that the protocols required in this decision are temporary until the large load tariff, or CTT, goes into effect. Through that proceeding, the Commission may alter the size threshold or commercial principles going forward. I'll also note that Mr. Eden will be taking up the issue of the size threshold for emissions verification as raised by WRA SWEEP later in the discussion. I'll pause there.
Commissioner Gilman.
Thanks, Mr. Medelson. I'm good with your clarifications and recommendation.
Commissioner Plant.
I agree.
As do I.
All righty. Thank you very much. The next issue is load aggregation. Public Service takes issue with the aggregation of meters as it relates to the 50 megawatt large load threshold. Specifically, the Commission's decision refers to as measured across all meters billed to the same entity. The company argues this will leave unintended consequences and group many customers into the large load tariff. For example, local governments may have numerous meters across their areas billed to a single entity, and the peak demand over the RAP measured across those meters may exceed 50 megawatts. Similarly, grocery stores, some school districts, colleges, or even the state of Colorado itself could be impacted by this directive and migrated over to the large load tariff. Public Service states that it believes this was not the Commission's intention and that a load's projected peak demand should be determined without aggregation. I could pause here for your discussion or provide a recommendation.
Yeah, if you can give us your recommendation, that'd be great.
All right. Advisors note that our intention in making the original recommendation was certainly not to sweep local governments or grocery store chains into the LLT, but rather to guard against gaming the 50 megawatt thresholds where newer expanded loads are purposely segmented in order to avoid the large load tariff. As above, advisors recommend the Commission clarify that only new or incremental loads as projected over the RAP are subject to the commercial principle and fair notice protocols. Given this clarification, advisors suggest the Commission should deny Public Service's request and find that by only subjecting new or incremental loads to the large load tariff, the issue of pulling municipal load or grocery chains is moot, unless they are significantly expanding their loads and therefore appropriately eligible for the new tariff.
Commissioner Gilman.
I agree.
Commissioner Plant.
I agree.
As do I.
All righty. The next issue is distribution connected loads. Public Service argues that distribution level customers should be exempt from the large load tariff as it risks the same potential consequences as mandating service based on aggregated peak demands across multiple meters, that grocery stores, schools, and local governments will unwittingly be subject to the large load tariff. The company also asserts that customers with incremental need changes that move from distribution to transmission level voltage should be exempted from the large load tariff at this time. They explain that at least one major existing customer that plays a key economic role in the state is looking to move from distribution level voltage to transmission level voltage while also making changes to current on-site generation. A move to the large load tariff could negatively impact these plans or other customers in similar circumstances. I'll pause here for discussion or can provide a recommendation.
If you can give us a recommendation, that'd be great.
Advisors note there is no clear boundary in the record between transmission and distribution level customers amongst both data centers and non-data centers, or the size of loads based on voltage of service. Further, there is no distinction in the cost of building or procuring generation resources in order to serve transmission versus distribution customers. Apparently, one major distribution customer is planning a move to transmission level service, further muddying the waters and supporting consistent treatment amongst them. Accordingly, we recommend the Commission hold firm on its decision to provide fair notice that the LLT CTT may be applicable to both transmission and distribution customers that exceed the 20 megawatt incremental need threshold over the RAT period.
Commissioner Gilman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
as do I.
Alrighty. The next issue is the retroactive impact of LLT on commercial principles. The company also seeks clarification regarding paragraph 70 of the decision that any ESA and IA that contains applicable commercial principles as modified through the phase 1 decision are deemed reasonable. Public Service seeks confirmation that no additive commission approvals of these contracts prior to execution are necessary. As mentioned above, CEO also questions if the commission approves a different set of commercial principles in the LLT, will those changes be applied retroactively to the commercial principles that the customer initially agreed to in their signed contracts? I'll pause here or can provide a recommendation.
If you can give us a recommendation, that'd be great.
All right. Advisors recommend the commission determine that Public Service interpretation is accurate and as set forth above, the commercial principles as modified by the decision are not subject to change once embedded in a signed contract, that being an ESA, IA, or equivalent. Consistent with those clarifications, advisors suggest the commission determine that further approvals are not needed by the commission and that there is no retroactive application of commercial principles as suggested by CEO.
Commissioner Gilman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
as do I.
Alrighty. The next issue is line extensions in the LLT. WRA sweep suggests that the commission clarify whether it directs the company to bring forward revisions to transmission and distribution line extension policies as part of the large load filing, and if not, to identify whether the commission intends to examine these policies in another forum. Here, advisors agree that line extension policies are likely relevant to the LLT process and that the commission should direct the company to bring forward any revisions as part of its AL filing.
Commissioner Gilman,
Yes, I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
as do I.
Alrighty, the final issue or discussion I'd like to have is CEO brought forth a series of questions, and I think they're mostly answered, but if we could just quickly go through them so we can respond specifically. They ask, how will the rate structure and energy demand charges change for these customers? Advisors recommend here clarifying that consistent with the fair notice concept, the rate structure, including energy and demand charges, may change for new large loads. The commission does not have the record in this proceeding to specify the extent to which the rate structure may change. This is the intent of the large load tariff proceeding.
Commissioner Gilman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
as do I.
Alrighty, the next question they offer is If the commission approves a different set of commercial principles in the LLT decision, will those changes be applied retroactively to the commercial principles that the customer initially agreed to in their signed contracts? And as above, advisors recommend clarifying that further changes to the commercial principles will not apply retroactively to previously signed ESAs and IAs.
Commissioner Gilman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
as do I.
Okay, the next question is, will the CTT be optional for these customers? Advisors recommend the commission clarify that as envisioned by the phase one decision, any clean transition tariff arising from the large load tariff would be voluntary, but that the details of the CTT still need to be developed in the upcoming proceeding.
Commissioner Gilman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
as do I.
All righty. Again, coming to the home stretch here. Next question is, will a future advice letter determine which customers could be eligible for the CTT? Here we suggest the commission respond, yes, the upcoming advice letter proceeding will determine CTT eligibility by size.
Commissioner Gilman,
Agreed.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
as do I.
All right, and then the last two I'll group together. Can a customer be on both the LLT and CT, or are these tariffs mutually exclusive? And if the commission adopts a CTT, can a customer eligible for that tariff take service on that tariff instead of the LLT? Here, advisors recommends just suggesting that the details of the large load tariff and the clean transition tariff and their interaction will be developed in the forthcoming large load tariff proceeding.
Commissioner Gilman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
as do I.
All righty, thank you very much. I'll pass it back to Mr. Eden now.
Mr. Eden,
Good, thank you. The first issue I will present is the phase one modeling updates. In the phase one decision, the commission granted the request from the Colorado Energy Consumers, or CEC, to require updated phase one modeling with refreshed load forecast and updated assumptions regarding generic costs and other inputs. The commission directed the company to file the updated phase one modeling together with a refreshed long-term rate analysis by December 31st, 2025. Public Service requests RRR on both the timing and scope of this modeling directive. As to the scope, the company proposes to focus the updated modeling on the base plan and the $0 per CO2 and the base plan with the social cost of carbon. The company notes that, as written, the phase one decision appears to require Public Service to model every phase one portfolio. As to timing, the company requests additional time to perform the updated modeling with a new deadline set as within 90 days of a final decision in this proceeding. Finally, Public Service asks that the commission expressly state the updated modeling is informational only. For clarity, I'll note that Public Service did not file the updated modeling by December 31st. I'll pause here for your discussion unless you would like a recommendation.
no, I have some thoughts I'd like to share and just say I was a little frustrated that the company didn't timely provide the modeling requested, as I think it's important, although I understand that it may have been too much. For example, the latest Encompass model run supporting both the low and base proposed JTS resource acquisitions were filed in October 2024 and likely developed months before that. As such, they reflect costs that existed 15 to 18 months ago and now seem totally outdated, as wind, solar, and CT costs have maybe doubled since then. Given this paradigm shift in costs, we're now moving forward without a single recent Encompass run, optimizing the resource mix based on actual current economics. I have three other concerns that I'd like to see addressed in this modeling. First, given the curtailment shown in the JTS, as well as the conversation about curtailment at the NTP technical conference, I'm increasingly concerned that Colorado may be getting saturated with remote wind and solar, and that additional acquisitions may need more analysis and scrutiny. Outside of maybe 5 to 10% of the highest and lowest load hours, Excel retail demand in Colorado averages between 3 and 6,000 megawatts. At the same time, we currently have already committed to building a cumulative total of roughly 10,000 megawatts of wind and solar. Going forward, given the approved JTS load forecast, we're on track to potentially approve in phase 2 of this case another 5 to 7,000 gigawatts of additional renewables, while the NTP, as prefers, would accelerate roughly 4,800 megawatts of these acquisitions. I'm increasingly concerned that these additional acquisitions may start to push us toward and beyond a saturation point. To illustrate this concern, the JTS modeling shows that the projected Rush Creek net capacity factor falls from 42% in 2025 to 20% in 2030. Said another way, the project-specific curtailment seems to increase to over 50% by 2030. That's a really large and very scary number. We're basically curtailing that plant more than half the time, at least according to that one analysis. And the various summaries of total curtailment show similar problems in the low and lower load growth scenarios. In the 2021 ERP, at the request of the IPPs, we approved compensating projects for lost revenues and tax credits due to economic curtailment. Given those decisions, and for an IPP project with the exact same characteristics as Rush Creek, it seems like customers could start paying up to $40 to $60 million per year for curtailed generation and lost tax credits from this single project. Over the entire fleet of operating and currently approved projects, this may be a $400 to $500 million per year issue in additional curtailment costs or lost value that I don't think has been fully included in the company's analysis. Even larger compensable curtailment obligations may be owed to the owners of new facilities being built either in phase 2 of this process or in the NTP. As such, I may be developing increasing concerns with our decision on compensable tax credits for curtailments, as it may result in adverse multi-billion-dollar customer impact. Although this is all back of the envelope and indicative, the larger point is that this risk needs to be better understood and quantified. Third, in the low load JTS SEC case, the company indicates that the remote renewables provide almost 1,000 megawatts of firm accredited capacity, and in the NTP, over 800 megawatts of firm accredited capacity. As such, Colorado will be relying on this new capacity to keep the lights on and retire the coal plants. At the same time, however, the company has told us that it can't identify the specific new transmission lines needed to deliver this remote capacity into the Denver metro area, and that the $2 to $2.5 billion transmission cost estimates are indicative. Given these uncertainties, we've requested additional transmission modeling prior to the large load tariff filing, and I'd like to reiterate the importance of that modeling and other efforts to resolve these core transmission cost timing, and resource adequacy uncertainties. So given all this, I'd like to ask the company to use the adjusted low load forecast consistent with the directives in our phase 1 decision as the core Encompass model demand forecast, using both a $0 and a social cost of carbon adder. My request would be for the company to focus on these two forecasts, at 0 and social cost of carbon, and would not require any additional nuclear, ADER, advanced technology, no new gas or other runs. Although, of course, the company is welcome to submit any additional model runs that it thinks provide useful context. In terms of the supply side, I'd like the company to assume that the proposed Tier 1 NTP projects are forced into this core model run at the proposed bid prices, plus whatever additional generic resources we might need to meet the JTS adjusted load forecast, again, based on the pricing of the Tier 1 NTP projects. The final cost analysis should also include the indicative $2.5 billion in new transmission needed to get the remote renewables into Denver. As part of the economic analysis, I'd also ask the company to evaluate the Encompass model level curtailment unit by unit if reasonably possible, including estimates of compensable lost revenue and tax credit payments under existing contract approaches. I then asked for this analysis to be included in the long-term rate impact model previously presented as hearing exhibit 133 with any changes in assumptions from that model explicitly identified, and that the model start with 2024 actual cost, sales, and rates from the company's most recent SEC 10-K filing. This updated long-term rate model should be filed in conjunction with the new Encompass runs. In addition to this analysis based on the company's preferred NTP plan, I'd like to see an alternative evaluation conducted, subject to only one constraint, that GHG emission reductions are 80% by 2030. So basically an unconstrained run. In this alternative analysis, the preferred Tier 1 NTP projects would not be forced in the model, and the model should develop the lowest cost option, including optimizing for transmission and curtailment under both the Zero and SEC adder. I then request that these results be presented in the long-term rate model hearing exhibit 133 format. Finally, to account for the value of the resources within the Denver metro, of new generation located within the Denver metro area, I'd ask the company to use the $191 per kW Denver metro area constraint adder the company proposed in the JTS. Finally, I just say I know that's a lot that you're hearing today for the first time. So I propose bringing this back next week for a vote once you've had a chance to look at these requests in more detail and talk to advisors and counsel. So I will provide this script and give you guys a chance to talk to advisors and counsel before we vote on that. So I guess Commissioner Gilman, anything you'd I'm not prepared to talk about timing today. And I think this, I'm not willing to commit that this is somehow informational and we're not going to use it to shape phase 2 and other resource acquisition bids. I mean, at the current time, we don't have a single Encompass model run based on anything close to current economics. So, Commissioner Gilman, comments, thoughts, anywhere you'd like to go, anything you'd like to add? And like I say, I'm not proposing a vote today.
You've preempted several of my comments, first of all, by suggesting we take this up next week, which I think is necessary once I see your actual comments. And then by saying we're not sure on the timing yet. I just don't understand, maybe from you and Mr. Eden. So obviously, as we go into the RFP, get the RFP responses, we'll have those modeling runs come back in the 120-day report. When I understand you're not like committing to a timing today, but when roughly would these new Encompass models run in that like time horizon, and then what operates off of those changes for the phase 2 modeling? I'm just trying to get clear in my mind, like how this operationalizes if you make these changes now that phase 1 is kind of like done. How does that impact going forward?
I guess, I mean, just to be clear, we asked for this by December 31st, so we'd have it before the large load tariff filing and maybe before the NTP stuff was final. So this is a significant delay from what we asked for before. And I mean, I just think the phase 2 is going to be really tight. We're being asked to make decisions involving tens of billions of new resources with very constrained, unlimited analysis. So I'm thinking, you know, the company said 90 days after RRR. I'm thinking maybe April 2nd. But what I mean, we may have to hear more from the company. But I just think there's massive uncertainties in the current analytical framework, and we're being asked to make multiple multi-billion-dollar decisions. So
okay, and we're already lacking some of the modeling that we had requested in preparation for the large load tariff.
Yeah, yes, this modeling we ordered to be due December 31st, and the company did not submit anything. It just submitted a request for RRR to simplify the request and delay it out into April. That's my understanding. Mr. Eden, would you say that any different?
That's correct. The phase 1 decision sets a December 31st deadline. The company filed RRR on that directive though, and then the company did not file the modeling.
Okay. And part of the concept was that that information would be helpful in advance of the large load tariff filing.
Well, and certainly for the NTP too.
Hypothetically, still expected later this month, and hypothetically, the company wants to move fairly quickly.
I mean, I don't know when we're going to get the tariff. I heard it was delayed, but I don't know that that was ever in the filing.
Okay.
Mr. Eden.
I just know they expressed concern around the uncertainty around a large load tariff, so I would anticipate they're trying to move things along. Okay, well, yeah, I'd be happy to see your remarks. That would be really helpful. And better just understand, maybe Mr. Eden, you can work with me to help understand like how this information then works in any way to like inform phase two and where we go from here.
Commissioner Plan, anything you want to add?
No, similarly, I'm looking forward to looking at your proposal and we'll come back with more questions next week.
Perfect. That's all I got, Mr. Eden. If you want to keep going, but that'd be great unless you have any clarifications.
No, I think that's clear on my end. So the next issue I'll tee up is the strategic reserve fund. In the phase one decision, the commission approved a modified strategic reserve fund concept in which it approved a $200 million budget for the advanced purchase of transformers and breakers. In so doing, the commission adopted the process Colorado Independent Energy Association, or CIEA, proposed in its statement of position for equitably distributing the transformers and breakers. This process includes requiring PPA and utility-owned bids to include public services overnight costs for transformers and breakers in their bids. In its RRR, Public Service requests modifying this directive, arguing that bidders do not include public services overnight costs for transformers and breakers in their bids, and that directing bidders to include such costs could create bidder confusion and complicate the JTS Phase 2 bid evaluation process. Public Service asserts that after the Commission approves a Phase 2 portfolio, the company will work to make transformers and breakers available to selected projects on an equitable basis. Would you like a recommendation on this point?
I would.
Advisors recommend granting Public Services RRR on this point with modifications. Consistent with the company's RRR, the Commission should clarify that bidders are not required to include public services overnight costs for transformers and breakers in their bids. Given the limited number of transformers and breakers that can be funded through the Strategic Reserve Fund, it would be risky for bidders to rely on such costs in any event. To improve transparency, however, advisors recommend requiring Public Service to file a report in this proceeding setting forth the cost of the transformers and breakers it acquires or reserves via the Strategic Reserve Fund. In addition, Public Service should be directed to confirm in the 120-day report that the equipment procured through the Strategic Reserve Fund did not influence the bid evaluation and selection process. In addition, Public Service should set forth how the company plans to equitably distribute the equipment acquired through the Strategic Reserve Fund.
Commissioner Gilman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
as do I.
Thank you. In the Phase 1 decision, the Commission noted that it has relatively little insight into the negotiation process between Public Service and bidders. To increase transparency in the negotiation process, the Commission directed the creation of a new confidential channel through which bidders could use the Independent Evaluator, or IE, to share their negotiation experiences with the Commission and stakeholders. In its RRR, Public Service asserts the IE should also have a confidential channel through which Public Service has the option to report about the company's negotiation experiences. The company reasons the IE should be given the opportunity to discuss the feedback it gets from bidders for these reports with Public Service in order to get the full picture to inform any regular reporting. In the alternative, Public Service asks that it be expressly permitted to offer responses to the reports. Would you like a recommendation?
I would.
Advisors recommend denying the company's RRR request. The main purpose of the new anonymous communication channel between the individual bidders and the IE is to provide a low-risk option for bidders to share their experiences with the commission and stakeholders. Public Service does not explain how bidders could be ensured the ability to anonymously report their experiences under the company's proposal. Public Service is free to file a response to any filing the IE makes regarding the bidder's experiences, but the company should not be able to discuss the reports with the IE, as that would threaten the anonymity that the Phase 1 decision directs.
Commissioner Gilman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
as do I.
Thank you. In the Phase 1 decision, the Commission rejected UCA's request for additional process to review the updated load forecast that the company will file prior to the solicitation and that will be used for the base RFP. UCA seeks reconsideration of this ruling in RRR, warning that not having such a process means that the Phase 2 bid evaluation and selection may be built upon an inaccurate foundational forecast. UCA believes that the risks of unchecked error are greater than the cost of a managed review period. And I also have a recommendation on this one if you would like.
That'd be great.
Advisors recommend rejecting UCA's RRR request. The load forecast was one of the most litigated issues during Phase 1. In the Phase 1 decision, the Commission directed Public Service to make several modifications to its load forecast. If UCA or any other party believes that the company's updated load forecasts are somehow inconsistent with the Commission's directives, they can reach out to Public Service or file an appropriate motion.
Commissioner Gilman.
Thanks, Mr. Eden. Yeah, I agree, although I am a bit sympathetic to UCA here. I think to your point, Mr. Eden, that this was one of the most litigated issues in Phase 1. That means as a result, there were several changes that the company was ordered to make, and we're kind of taking on faith that they will make in their submitted forecast. So while I agree with you in rejecting the RRR, I don't want that to serve as a discouragement for UCA as well as the other parties to really look at and scrutinize that forecast when it comes in. And please do alert the commission if they don't believe, for good reason, that it complies with the commission's orders. I agree with them to that point that it's really essential that we get a forecast that is compliant with the Phase 1 decision. We really value the parties reviewing that and bringing up if there do appear to be significant issues of non-compliance in that forecast so that we can appropriately address it.
Commissioner Plant.
I agree.
So I agree with your recommendation, and I support Commissioner Gilman's comments being included in the RRR order as appropriate, Mr. Eden.
Good. That makes sense to me. The next issue is the model depreciation life of gas units. In the Phase 1 decision, the Commission held that new gas assets would be limited to a 22-year book life for purposes of Phase 1 modeling. And its RRR, WRA, and SWEEP asked the company to be required to model new gas units with a depreciable life ending in 2050. WRA and SWEEP dispute the Commission's rationale that a 2050 cutoff would unintentionally result in the model selecting more thermal generation earlier in the RAP. They assert that when comparing the 2050 cutoff approach to the 22-year book life approach, the 22-year book life approach would make new gas generation appear less expensive in nearly every year of the resource acquisition period. Would you like a recommendation?
I would.
Advisors recommend rejecting WRA and SWEEP's RRR request to switch to the 2050 cutoff. WRA and SWEEP are correct that as to the two approaches, the 2050 cutoff results in a shorter depreciable life for most years. This does not negate, however, the Commission's rationale for adopting the 22-year book life approach. In both the base RFP and the supplemental RFP, the model will look past the respective end dates of the solicitations. Under the 2050 cutoff approach, new gas generation will appear increasingly expensive as the depreciation life shortens. This could result in the model attempting to front-load the acquisition of new gas plants. With the 22-year book life approach, the model will not have the same incentive to front-load the acquisition of gas plants.
Commissioner Gellman.
Thanks, Mr. Eden. I agree and acknowledge there's no perfect way to do this. I think we're trying our best to approximate and to acknowledge the 2050 goals in a lot of this planning, and I think our original approach works for the reasons you laid out.
Commissioner Plant.
I agree.
As do I.
Thank you. As Mr. Mendelson referenced earlier, in their RRR, WRA, and sweep seek reconsideration of the 100 megawatt threshold at which public service must provide an updated emissions verification workbook for purposes of the incremental need pool. They note that this 100 megawatt threshold, which derives from the phase 2 framework, matches the 100 megawatt threshold for large loads that the company initially proposed. However, the Commission subsequently changed the large load threshold to 50 megawatts. WRA and SWEEP recommend the Commission align the threshold for emissions verification workbooks in the incremental need pool with the Commission's 50 megawatt large load threshold. They reason the incremental need pool provides an expedited and flexible procurement process to serve new large load customers, so the Commission should ensure that the threshold for updated emissions verification reporting is at least as stringent as the broader demand threshold the Commission adopted. And I have a recommendation if you would like.
That'd be great.
Advisors recommend denying WRA and SWEEP's RRR on this point. The Phase 2 framework's 100 megawatt size threshold does not just trigger the need for a new emissions verification workbook. It triggers a particular regulatory path with a specified level of party and Commission review. Public service, staff, CIEA, and CEO all support the various regulatory paths set out in the Phase 2 framework. Advisors see little benefit to further modifying the Phase 2 framework. WRA and SWEEP's request would create another regulatory pathway in the incremental need pool and potentially slow down the process. Moreover, as the Phase 1 decision notes, the Phase 1 decision notes that even for those large loads that do not trigger an updated emissions verification workbook, the intent is to maintain system emissions performance alongside cost and feasibility, and the parties and the Commission will have input into those decisions.
Commissioner Gellman.
I agree.
Commissioner Plant.
I agree.
As do I.
Thank you. In its direct case, Public Service put forth a program concept for a voluntary 24/7 carbon-free energy, or CFE, acquisition strategy that aims to match a participating customer's electricity consumption with carbon-free generation on an hourly basis. In the Phase 1 decision, the Commission agreed with the Colorado Communities for Climate Action, or CC4CA, to reject the company's proposed acquisition strategy for CFE resources. The Commission also granted CC4CA's request to require Public Service to convene a stakeholder group to further refine the details of a voluntary CFE product. But the Phase 1 decision denies CC4CA's remaining CFE requests. In RRR, CC4CA asks the Commission to provide clearer direction to Public Service regarding the required timeline for and outcomes of the CFE stakeholder process. CFE argues the stakeholder group should launch within 90 days of a final Phase 1 decision and conclude far enough in advance to enable Public Service to incorporate the results into the issuance of the supplemental RFP. CC4CA also requests that the Commission direct Public Service to explicitly solicit CFE resources through the supplemental RFP, as well as file a report in this proceeding summarizing the work of the stakeholder group. Further, CC4CA supports CEO's recommendation to include new large loads in the CFE product design. Would you like to hear my recommendation?
I would.
Advisors recommend granting in part CC4CA's RRR request. Advisors recommend directing Public Service to launch the CFE stakeholder group within 90 days of a final JTS Phase 1 decision and file a report in this proceeding summarizing the work of the stakeholder group. through organizations participating in the group, notes from each meeting, and recommendations from the stakeholder group regarding product design. Regarding the inclusion of large loads, public service, CC4CA, or other stakeholders are free to invite large load customers into the stakeholder process, but advisors recommend against trying to mandate such participation. Advisors recommend rejecting CC4CA's other RRR requests, including deciding at this juncture that CFE resources be acquired through the supplemental RFP. Consistent with the Phase 1 decision, the specifics for how a CFE program should be designed are best left for the stakeholder group or a future filing where there is a concrete proposal and record.
Commissioner Gelman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
as do I.
Thank you. Early in the proceeding, the Commission directed Public Service to craft a model contract for distribution connected storage resources. The company provided this model contract as part of its supplemental direct testimony. In RRR, the Coalition for Community Solar Access, or CCSA, requests that Public Service be directed to also develop a model contract for distribution connected storage paired with renewable generation. In other words, hybrid resources. CCSA recommends this model contract be based on the model contract for distribution connected storage, including any improvements to the model contract approved by the Commission and any further decisions on RRR. And would you like to hear my recommendation on this one?
I would.
Advisors recommend the Commission grant CCSA's request in part. Advisors agree with CCSA that having the requested model contract may encourage the submission, selection, and development of distribution connected storage paired with renewables. Accordingly, we recommend directing Public Service to present this new model PPA as part of the RFP package for the base RFP, so long as doing so does not materially delay the issuance of the base RFP.
Commissioner Gelman,
Thanks. I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
as do I. And I guess the next one, treatment of distributed solar and demand response. Can we push that till next week? I want to take another look at that one. Would that be okay, Mr. Eden?
Yes, yeah, we can take up that issue in the step 2 deliberations next week. And that's a good segue. At this point, I'll turn it over to Mr. Greenberg to present certain other issues regarding the resource acquisition adequacy study.
Mr.
Yes,
Greenberg.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. Dan Greenberg of your advisory staff. So my first issue this morning has to do with some RRR on whether or not to reflect membership in an organized wholesale market, or OWM, in the resource adequacy study. In the Phase 1 decision, the Commission acknowledged that joining an organized wholesale market would likely reduce the planning reserve margin and increase resource ELCCs, but because there was no record evidence indicating the assumptions the company should make regarding OWM membership or the specific impacts of OWM membership, the impacts on resource adequacy would be speculative. The Commission therefore found that modeling OWM membership in RA studies would remain premature until the 2028 ERP and declined to require such modeling for the base or supplemental RFPs. It did, however, require the filing of an application proceeding no later than March 31, 2027 to litigate resource adequacy study assumptions and methodologies so that any revisions could be incorporated into the RA study conducted for the 2028 ERP. UCA's RRR asked the Commission to reconsider postponing the modeling of OWM membership to the next ERP, stating that this decision conflicts with SB 21-072 and misaligns the relationship between the statutory OWM deadline and this proceeding's planning horizon. UCA argues that the Commission cannot recognize a binding statutory requirement to join an OWM by 2030 and then simultaneously treat the RA implications of that very OWM as too speculative to model in a resource plan that will determine 2030 capacity. UCA opines that the resources selected through the JTS will operate under an OWM for much of their lives, and that ignoring this overlap risks over-procurement or misciting of capacity. UCA addresses the Commission's concern about uncertainty regarding which market the company should join by stating that modeling inherently involves reasonable assumptions about uncertain future conditions, and there is no principled reason to exclude OWM participation from that framework. UCA also suggests that the Commission's decision here is inconsistent with its decision in proceeding 25A-0075E, which requires the company to file an OWM application or waiver by June 1, 2027, and which it claims will require robust modeling of the impacts of RTO or ISO options on resource adequacy and needed capacity. For these reasons, UCA asks the Commission to require Public Service to either model at least one RA and Phase 2 portfolio in this JTS that assumes OWM participation by 2030, using reasonable proxy assumptions for planning reserve margin and ELCC, or perform and file in this proceeding a focused RA sensitivity analysis evaluating the impact of OWM membership on PRM, ELCCs, and capacity needs during the JTS resource acquisition period, with results available before final Phase 2 selections. I'll pause here for any questions or your discussion, or can provide a recommendation.
If you can give us a recommendation, that'd be great.
Advisors agree that the membership and RA constructs of SPP West, CAISO, or any other potential ISO that may spring up in the next few years are currently unstable. And so we believe the Commission's decision to delay the requirement that the company's RA framework reflect OWM membership to the next ERP is well-founded. We therefore recommend denying UCA's RRR on this issue. However, it is at least possible, if not likely, that OWM membership will still be very dynamic in March 2027, when the company must submit its application to litigate the assumptions and methodologies in its next RA study for its next ERP. We therefore recommend requiring the company, requiring that the company's direct testimony in March 27 RA application proceeding include a minimum of 2 scenarios in which the company joins either SPP West or the California ISO, freezing those ISOs' memberships and RA frameworks at their then current state. We note that subsequent membership growth would most likely render the resulting RA study conservative.
Commissioner Gilman.
Thanks, Mr. Greenberg. I agree with your recommendations. I do share some of UCA's frustrations here in the complication of the timeline, certainly, but I think you've laid out a reasonable path to look at this in the upcoming RA study.
Commissioner Plant.
I agree.
As do I.
Very good. So now on to some transmission-related issues. The first being the status of the CPCN for the May Valley Longhorn Extension, or MVLE. In the decision, the Commission stated that although there is considerable uncertainty regarding how the phase-out of the renewable tax credits under the Federal Reconciliation Bill will be implemented, it is unlikely that an accelerated approval of the MVLA in Phase 1 will impact whether the associated renewable projects connecting to that line will be eligible for the tax credits. The Commission also concluded that the cost of any additional transmission, that is, in addition to the MVLE, necessitated by generation interconnecting to the MVLE, must factor into the Phase 2 decision. The Commission therefore directed the company to incorporate a line item presenting its estimate of the PVRR for all such additional transmission required for any Phase 2 portfolio that would trigger the need for it. The company states that it continues to see developer interest through the NTP, the near-term procurement proceeding, in Southeast Colorado, and the decision to defer MVLE approval to the Phase 2 decision will change the costs and timing of the project once again. The company asserts that the full approval of the MVLE now would allow construction to commence and creates at least the possibility of interconnecting tax advantage and higher ELCC resources in southeastern Colorado in 2029. The company also suggests that the project could create opportunities for better connectivity with neighboring states and utilities, an issue that will continue to increase in importance as the energy transition continues. Accordingly, the company seeks clarification regarding whether the Commission is comfortable with a continued wait-and-see posture on the MVLE, as opposed to issuing an unconditional CPCN at this time. I can pause here for your deliberation, or can provide a recommendation.
Yeah, if you have a recommendation, that'd be great.
To remain eligible for the tax credits, a wind or solar project must initiate physical work of a significant nature before July 5, 2026, and maintain a continuous program of construction such that the facility is placed in service within 4 calendar years of the year construction began. If an unconditional CPCN were granted now, it's conceivable that developers who have safe harbored equipment would submit bids interconnecting to the MVLE in the base RFP that would reflect tax advantage pricing. However, there are several considerations advisors would like to raise regarding that possibility. First, any developers bidding tax advantage projects into the base RFP may consider that they are competing against non-tax advantage projects and raise their bid prices accordingly. So ratepayers may not enjoy the full benefits of the tax credits, even if the MVLE is available to bidders. Second, advisors note that bidders may be unwilling to take the risk that if granted an unconditional CPCN here, the MVLE will be placed into service sufficiently in advance of the end of 2030 to enable their projects to be in operation on or before that date. With no control over the company's actions or the myriad of factors that could impede construction of the MVLE, developers may see this as too great a risk. Finally, the company's direct testimony indicates that significant new generation interconnecting in Southeast Colorado, i.e. on the MVLE, could necessitate anywhere between $224 and $786 million in additional 345 kV transmission beyond that required for the MVLE itself. Hence, the Phase 1 decision directive requiring public service to incorporate a line item presenting its estimate of the PVRR of all such additional transmission required for any Phase 2 portfolio that would trigger the need for it. The Commission further reasoned that the decision of whether to move forward with the MVLE will wait until there's a showing that a portfolio, including the cost of the MVLE, any related transmission investment in Southeast Colorado, is in the public interest. If the Commission granted a CPCN at this point, it could also be implicitly granting a CPCN for this additional transmission investment because the MVLE might not be able to operate without it. In light of all of the above, we recommend the Commission maintain its initial determination to base a decision on the MVLE CPCN on a determination that a Phase 2 portfolio, including the cost of the MVLE and any other necessary incremental transmission, would be in the public interest.
Commissioner Gilman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree as well. Less on the bidder dynamics, but more just we don't know what transmission we need and how we get it to Denver. So keep going, Mr. Greenberg.
All right. Now some RRR on interconnection with the Pacificor's Gateway South transmission line. The Phase 1 decision requires the company to, 1, conduct rigorous modeling to determine the potential for economically advantageous trades across this potential interconnection. 2, rigorously assess costs and benefits to determine whether it's sensible to move forward with the project development. And 3, comprehensively document the regulatory approvals from FERC, relevant state utility commissions, and the Moffat and Hayden County commissions that would be needed if a decision were made to build the line. The Phase 1 decision specifies that this information must be provided within 18 months. UCA in its RRR complains that the 18-month timeline specified in the decision means that this line cannot be considered in the base RFP. UCA therefore asks the Commission to make the analysis and report due by the first quarter of 2026. UCA notes that the Commission granted Grid United's request and required the company to evaluate non-generation capacity solutions, i.e. Grid United's Three Corners Connector HVDC line, and suggests that the 18-month deadline for the study of the Gateway South line is inconsistent with that directive. UCA indicates that interconnection with the Pacificor system could reduce the company's PRM, reducing the identified need, as well as provide community assistance and workforce benefits to Moffat County. Would you like a recommendation on this triple R?
Yes, please.
Advisors suggest that the commission deny this UCA request primarily because we don't believe the company would have sufficient time to conduct the rigorous, thorough study required in the decision within the few months prior to the end of this quarter. Advisors find UCA's argument regarding Grid United's request to evaluate non-generation capacity resources to be unpersuasive. As opposed to a detailed study, the phase one decision simply directs the company to evaluate non-generation capacity solutions, including interregional HVDC transmission projects that can come online before the end of the RAP. Public Service is not required to report on its considerations of non-generation capacity solutions until the supplemental RFP. Thus, the inconsistency UCA suggests does not exist. And again, we recommend that the commission deny this UCA request.
Commissioner Gilman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
as do I.
Very good. I will then now pass the discussion back to Mr. Eden.
Mr. Eden.
Thank you, Commissioner. So the next issue I'm prepared to present are several just transition issues that the parties raised in their triple R filings.
Ms. Dream, sorry, before you start, I was hoping we might be able to address the just transition issues in next week's meeting. I didn't want you to go through your whole presentation before I suggested that. So just wanted to see if that would be okay with you, Chairman.
Yes, if Mr. Eden, any concerns about pushing this to next week?
No, that's doable. We can take up the just transition issues and step to deliberations.
Commissioner Plant, anything you wanted to add?
It's fine with me.
Okay. Well, then, in order to give Mr. Greenberg a little bit longer of a break, I'll just go ahead and skip down to the best and final offer issue. It's one of the few additional triple R issues that I was planning on presenting at the end. But in their answer testimony, CIEA and Interwest both requested the commission implement a best and final offer process in phase two that would allow a subset of bids to refresh their prices. Under this best and final offer process, the bids in the approved portfolio plus the incremental need pool bids would be allowed a 10% price refresh opportunity after the phase two decision. Public Service would then re-rank the projects based on the updated pricing and provide a notice of final portfolio to the Commission. In the phase one decision, the Commission rejected the best and final offer proposal for purposes of this JTS, raising concerns about competitive tension. In triple R, CIEA requests that the Commission reconsider the best and final offer process, which CIEA argues would tackle the root cause of PPA execution delay experienced in the last ERP and mitigate the risk of another CEP delivery plan. Regarding the Commission's concerns that allowing repricing for winning bids would enable gaming, CIEA argues that, quote, price gaming happens regardless, end quote, and that the repricing would have competitive tension because not all bids in the incremental need pool would be selected. CIEA also argues that, as currently structured, bids in the incremental need pool have a relative advantage over the winning bids because the incremental need pool bids have an opportunity to reprice. To prevent a situation where winning bidders would need to withdraw without the opportunity to reprice, CIEA proposes in triple R a hybrid approach where the Commission could allow repricing for winning bidders via the incremental need pool activation process. Under this hybrid approach, if a winning bidder withdraws its project after the phase two decision, it may enter the incremental need pool and reprice with its technology and ownership cohort. CIEA notes that allowing winning bidders to join the incremental need pool would add competitive tension to the backup pool. Interwest also asked the Commission to reconsider its rejection of the best and final offer process. Interwest reiterates that the process maintains competitive tension as bidders will provide the lowest possible price increase. Interwest also adds that the best and final offer concept has been used in other recent regional RFPs. And I'll stop here for questions unless you would like to hear a recommendation.
I'd like to hear a recommendation.
The best and final offer process, and especially the hybrid process proposed in R, appears to have many positive attributes. On balance, however, advisors recommend the Commission stand by its initial decision and reject the RRs from CIEA and Interwest on this point. Advisors remain concerned the best and final offer process will incentivize gaming, where bidders lowball their initial bids and the real prices are submitted during the repricing process. CIEA asserts that price gaming happens regardless, but the best and final offer process removes an important disincentive for this. Namely, if a bidder lowballs its bid and is selected, the bidder would likely be forced to remove its project until the next ERP. There's no similar consequence under CIEA's proposal. There are also regulatory risks if bidders only put forth their real price in the backup selection process. Compared to the Phase 2 modeling and the 120-day report, there is considerably less process for selecting repriced bids out of the incremental need pool. Winning bids that move to the incremental need pool would only be competing against other bids in their technology and ownership cohort. Thus, the best and final offer process would lessen the importance of the bid evaluation and selection process that occurs for purposes of the Phase 2 decision, and instead shift the focus to the novel incremental need pool process, which has less regulatory process. In sum, advisors recommend rejecting the RRR request on this point, but reiterating the Phase 1 directive that Public Service confer with CIEA prior to the 2028 ERP about a modified approach and address this concept as part of its direct case in the 2028 ERP.
Commissioner Gilman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
as do I.
Thank you. The next topic is the renewable energy park. Throughout the proceeding, the Environmental Justice Coalition, or EJC, advocated for a renewable energy park in Pueblo. In the Phase 1 decision, the Commission rejected EJC's request to require Public Service to further study a renewable energy park, but instead directed the company to continue advancing efforts to develop the two components of a renewable energy park that are currently lacking: load flexibility for large loads and long duration energy storage. In its RRR, EJC reiterates its request that the Commission direct Public Service to begin studying and implementing a renewable energy park in Pueblo, including by convening a diverse set of stakeholders to discuss and make recommendations, and order the company to file a report discussing the stakeholder process and the next steps for a renewable energy park. EJC reminds the Commission of the numerous public comments filed in support of the renewable energy park, including comments from several elected officials. EJC argues that even if the company continues developing load flexibility for large loads and long duration energy storage, nothing requires the company to take any actions to create a renewable energy park in Pueblo. Would you like my recommendation on this point?
We would.
Advisors recommend rejecting EJC's request and maintaining the findings and directives from the Phase 1 decision. EJC's RRR repeats the potential benefits of a renewable energy park and the numerous public comments submitted in support. EJC's RRR does not, however, discuss the Commission's substantive findings that the main obstacles for developing a renewable energy park are attracting industrial customers to serve as flexible load and developing long duration energy storage. Another stakeholder study in Pueblo, as EJC requests, is unlikely to yield significant benefits on these two issues. A better approach to developing a renewable energy park is directing Public Service to continue advancing efforts to develop load flexibility for large loads and long duration energy storage through venues such as the Large Load Tariff Filing, the Clean Transition Tariff, and the Carbon-Free Future Development Process. More fundamentally, EJC seems to imply the only way a renewable energy park will exist is if the Commission directs the company to develop one. As a general matter, the Commission does not direct Public Service or any other entities to build particular types of resources in Phase 1 of the Commission's ERP proceedings. The Commission's ERP processes are designed to allow the private market and the company to submit their best proposals or bids for new resources, which are then evaluated and selected in phase 2. Having the commission direct that a certain type of resource be constructed prior to receiving any bid to do so does not fit within the commission's ERP regulatory structure and the concept of a competitive all-source solicitation. The commission should clarify that in considering and reconsidering EJC's request to require public service to conduct a stakeholder group and study on renewable energy parks, the commission has considered how best to provide equity, minimize impacts, and prioritize benefits to DI communities and address historical inequalities. The commission agrees with the potential benefits of a renewable energy park, but disagrees with EJC's position that a stakeholder group and study is a productive path forward.
Commissioner Gilman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
as do I.
All right, this next issue is about the renewal of Cherokee Unit 4. In its RRR, EJC asks the commission to reconsider and reverse its decision to approve a 1-year extension of Cherokee Unit 4, which is a natural gas-fired power plant. EJC reiterates how the Cherokee gas plant is located in a heavily polluted DI community in North Denver and Commerce City areas, and asserts that allowing Unit 4 to emit more pollution to this community for an additional year is unjust. EJC argues that public service and the commission fail to adequately analyze other alternatives that would achieve the company's stated objectives without harming the North Denver and Commerce City communities. Would you like a recommendation on this one?
We would.
Advisors recommend rejecting EJC's RRR. Public service put forth considerable evidence regarding the need for continued generation at Cherokee, including the JTS transmission study and a distribution factor analysis. As for alternative options, in EJC's answer testimony, EJC does not put forth any alternatives that would address the transmission congestion in Denver metro area, despite having an opportunity to conduct discovery. EJC assumes that the alternatives public service refers to in passing would lessen impacts to DI communities. It is also possible, however, that requiring Cherokee Unit 4 to close a year earlier would simply result in the need to run Cherokee Units 5, 6, and 7 at a higher capacity. While the commission is not ignoring the impacts Unit 4 has on the surrounding communities, the record simply does not support the proposition that there is a better alternative option.
Commissioner Gilman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
as do I.
Thank you. So this last issue before I turn it back to Mr. Greenberg, Grid United interprets the phase 1 decision as only requiring public service to consider non-generation capacity in the supplemental RFP. Grid United asks the commission to modify the directive so that public service is required to consider non-generation capacity solutions, including high voltage direct current or HVDC transmission projects in both the base and supplemental RFPs. And on this point, advisors would recommend denying Grid United's RRR as it is based on a misunderstanding of the phase 1 decision. The phase 1 decision, quote, directs public service to evaluate non-generation capacity solutions, including interregional HVDC transmission projects that can come online before the end of the RAP, end quote. The commission could clarify that this directive applies to the base RFP.
Commissioner Gilman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
as do I.
Thank you. So at this point, I'll turn it back to Mr. Greenberg to discuss the RRR issues regarding the transmission adders and credits.
Mr. Greenberg.
All right, so as Mr. Eden said, I'll discuss 5 RRR issues related to the calculation of transmission modeling adder and credit that are raised by various parties. First is the exclusion of the Harvest Chambers Sandown Cherokee or HCSC line, the cost of that line from the transmission adder calculation. In its direct case, public service proposed a modeling adder of $238 per kilowatt for all bids other than those connecting to the distribution system, those interconnecting to the Colorado Power Pathway, or those that propose to reuse the interconnection facilities of retiring generators. Bidders proposing interconnection within and west of the Denver Metro constraint would be credited $191 per kilowatt. This proposal garnered significant attention from interveners. Some, like CCSA, CEI, and Pivot Energy, advocated for higher transmission adder. Others, like staff, CEO, Interwest, argued to reduce or eliminate the transmission adder. In particular, staff argued the transmission adder the company proposes is excessive and will result in a bias towards smaller gas-intensive portfolios. As a solution, staff recommended removing the estimated cost of the $1.8 to $1.9 billion HCSC project from the adder, since this project appears unavoidable. In the alternative, staff recommended that the Commission direct the small stakeholder group convened to address transmission issues under the Phase 2 framework to evaluate and propose a more appropriate adder for use in Phase 2. In the Phase 1 decision, the Commission agreed with staff's perspective and directed that the cost of the HCSC project be excluded from the adder. This reduced the adder from $238 to $23 per kilowatt hour. In its RRR, the Coalition for Community Solar Access, or CCSA, argues that the fact that the HCSC transmission line cannot be avoided in any of the transmission scenarios presented by the company is precisely the reason why Public Service needs to impute the cost of the HCSC project to utility scale bids through the transmission adder to account for the cost of the new transmission lines that will be required to deliver power from new utility scale resources. CCSA contends that excluding the HCSC from the transmission adder would result in a bid evaluation process that fails to account for the substantial transmission costs that distribution-connected resources avoid. It states that the purpose of the transmission adder is simply to level the playing field between resources that drive transmission costs and resources that avoid these costs when Public Service evaluates these resources in its expansion modeling, and that failing to reflect these costs will undervalue distribution-connected resources and result in portfolios that are more expensive for ratepayers. Conversely, including the HCSC in the adder calculation will result in a very meaningful incentive for developers to submit distribution-connected bids. Further, CCA notes that portfolios incorporating a larger number of smaller distribution-connected projects could substantially reduce costs and provide greater diversification, thereby improving reliability. CCSA therefore asked the Commission to reverse its decision and approve the company's proposal to include the HCSC cost in the adder calculation. Would you like a recommendation on this issue?
Yes, please.
Advisors believe that CCSA's critique of the staff justification for removing the cost of the HCSC from the adder is valid. While this cost may in the end be unavoidable, distribution-connected bids do offer the significant benefit of delivering much or all of their energy via the distribution system, thereby avoiding the need for transmission upgrades. However, advisors see CCSA's request as the tail wagging the dog. Distribution-connected resources may well be selected in Phase 2, but the vast majority of the need will certainly be filled by transmission-connected resources. Furthermore, advisors see no evidence that distribution-connected resources could or are likely to approach the magnitude of capacity necessary to render the HCSC unneeded. We therefore recommend rejecting CCSA's request to reverse this directive.
Commissioner Gilman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
as do I.
Very well. We'll move on now to the calculation of the Denver Metro transmission credit. Public Service proposed a credit for resources interconnecting to the transmission system within the Denver metro area. It calculated this credit by dividing the difference in transmission costs between the baseline transmission portfolio and the high DER bookend 2 portfolio by the difference in assumed DER capacity between those two portfolios. The Phase 1 decision responded to the following criticisms of the company's calculation methodology. One, CCSA is concerned that the denominator in the calculation used the entire 750 megawatt difference in assumed DER capacity rather than limiting the denominator to only DER installed within the Denver metro constraint. 2, staff's concern that the calculation fails to account for modeled portfolio differences other than the quantity of DER installed. And 3, staff's concern that the map the company provides in rebuttal indicating where the Denver Metro transmission credit would be applicable is inconsistent with that provided in the Denver Metro CPCN and requires additional study. In the phase 1 decision, the commission agreed that the company's methodology had significant shortcomings. The commission noted that CCSA's criticism was not supported by specific record evidence and so did not require any modification based on CCSA's assertion. However, the commission did accept the staff concerns about this calculation and so directed the company to perform additional modeling to fix the deficiencies in the calculation and application of the credit, to file notice of any changes in the credit, and directed that the small stakeholder group would have the opportunity to review and comment on the results of this additional modeling prior to the phase 2 modeling. CCSA's RRR contends that its recommendation for a 15% reduction in the denominator of the credit calculation actually was the result of a rigorous calculation that CCSA witness Beach prepared based on data that public service provided in discovery. CCSA further cites the hearing testimony on this issue by public service witness John Landrum, conceding the validity of CCSA's criticism, though he expressed the opinion that making the correction would, quote, create the impression of false precision. CCSA claims that it demonstrated by preponderance of evidence that the calculation correction it seeks is warranted and that this is unrebutted. It claims that the decision was an error by stating that CCSA had included nothing in the record to substantiate its claim and asked that this correction be reflected in additional credit modeling the commission required in response to the staff concerns. Would you like for a recommendation on this issue?
Yes.
Advisors note that CCSA does not point to record evidence to substantiate the calculation change it advocates, merely alludes to a work paper it circulated to all parties in the proceeding. Nonetheless, its argument that the denominator should reflect only DER within the Denver Metro is sound, as Mr. Landrum agreed at hearing. We therefore recommend granting CCSA's RRR request and directing that the credit calculation and the additional comparative transmission modeling reflect the amount of DER modeled as within the Denver Metro area and not the total amount of DER modeled in the scenario.
Commissioner Gellman.
I agree.
Commissioner Plant.
I agree.
As do I.
All right, now a quick issue regarding the units of the distribution credit. CCSA points out that the decision incorrectly states the modeling credit to be applied to the distribution connected bids on eligible feeders as $69 per kilowatt and asks that the commission clarify that the units for that credit should be dollars per kilowatt year, so $69 per kilowatt year. And advisors recommend that note that the CCSA is correct, that the units should be dollars per kilowatt year, and recommend that the commission note this in its RRR decision.
Good by me, Commissioner Gellman.
An easy one. I agree.
Commissioner Plant.
I agree.
Bring us on, Mr. Greenberg.
All right. An issue on reduction of the distribution credit. Noting the commission's directive that the HCSC project should be removed from the calculation of the transmission adder, thereby reducing it, as I said earlier, from $238 to $23 per kilowatt. CIEA requested the commission clarify whether and to what extent the $190 per credit for resources interconnecting with the Denver Metro constraint is proportionally reduced. Would you like a recommendation on this issue?
Please.
Advisors see no basis for CIEA's suggestion that the credit for resources connecting within the constraint should be reduced in proportion to any reduction of the transmission adder. CIEA makes no effort to explain why there should be a proportionate reduction, nor does it point to faults in the calculation of the credit. Advisors note that since the credit is calculated as the difference in costs between the baseline and bookend 2 portfolios, and that since both portfolios assume construction of the HCSC line, the calculation already excludes the cost of the HCSC. We therefore recommend denying CCSA's RRR on this point.
Commissioner Gellman.
I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
as do I.
All right, and just one more issue, and this has to do with capacity expansion modeling without the transmission adder or credit. In its RRR, CIEA expresses concern that the transmission needed to integrate new resources is viewed in this proceeding solely as a cost, and that no consideration is given to the economic benefits provided by transmission. As a result, it states that transmission will be reflected only as a cost burdening model portfolios, likely benefiting gas-heavy portfolios. CIEA asked the Commission to require at least one optimization run in which the transmission adder and Denver Metro credit are not applied to resources. CIEA suggests that doing so would provide insight into portfolio costs, quote, without manipulation, end quote. CIEA compares this to the Commission's decision to require portfolios with and without the JTS modeling credits, and suggests that portfolios 13 and or 14 could be extended to also remove the transmission-related adder and credit, or that a 15th portfolio be required to implement this. Would you care for a recommendation on this issue?
Please.
Advisors suggest that the Commission emphatically reject CIEA's proposal. Although it's imprecise and subject to numerous alternative party preferences, the representation of the potential approximate costs of transmission that will be required to interconnect and deliver resources to be procured in this proceeding is, in advisors' view, a very welcome and important advance in the ERP process. As we saw in proceeding 21A-0141E, and again in the JTS transmission study conducted for this proceeding, the cost of this transmission is very significant. While it is not possible in most cases to attribute incremental transmission costs to specific bids in the time-constrained context of phase 2, the company's laudable intent here was to ballpark the range of possibilities and, to the degree possible, differentiate those modeled costs based on cost causation. Additionally, advisors are conscious of the Commission's effort in the phase 1 decision to not expand the number of modeling runs required in the 120-day report. CIEA's request to add a modeling run is a step in the wrong direction, particularly as the modeling run would yield results that do not reflect any measure of imposed transmission costs.
Commissioner Gilman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
as do I.
Very good. I mean, I believe that ends our discussion of the RRR issues for this week.
Mr. Eden, anything else for today?
No, Mr. Greenberg's correct. That concludes the issues that were teed up for the step 1 deliberations. We will continue the journey next week with step 2.
Thanks to the team for an efficient presentation. Commissioner Gilman, final thoughts before we adjourn?
No, nothing additional. Thanks.
Commissioner Plant.
Nothing additional here either. Thanks.
All right. Thanks. See you next time.